Hello and welcome everybody. This is going to be the first episode of the Delightful World podcast. With our special guest, Improvement Pill, 3.5 million subscribers on YouTube, millions of views. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, thanks for having me on. Yeah, I'm Improvement Pill. I'm a YouTuber. Talk about self-improvement subjects. I travel the world, and I try to help people out. That's the gist of it.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, like, how long have you been doing this for?
It's been I think 7 years now. Long time.
Where did you learn to draw?
Actually, I don't draw any of it. I outsource the work to artists in other countries, usually like Philippines or Mexico, South America, and they draw everything. So I just write and I record the audio, and then I give the script to them, and they come up with the storyboard, and then we just like decide what each scene's going to be.
Right. Right. I mean, have you ever like do you have you ever work on like Fiverr, for example? Do you ever like hire people there or no?
Yeah, Fiverr actually it's not that great because they have so many clients and they're used to doing like very quick projects. So I prefer to have somebody who has enough time to dedicate to just like working on the project with me because there's usually a deadline. And for a video that's like 6 minutes, it takes them about like 30 to 40 hours of work. And if they have like two other side projects, it might take them like more than a month or two. But I usually need the video within a month.
Mhm. Well, how many like videos would you be like working on like within, let's just say, like right now at a
It
time?
really depends. Yeah, it really depends. So the way my channel works is it's kind of tough for me to make videos without sponsors because it can cost anywhere from like $600 to 1,200 bucks, depending on how long the video is. So unless like I have a sponsor, the video is almost guaranteed to lose me money unless like it's like a 1 in 5 or 1 in 10 video that like goes semi-viral and then I'll break even. So I kind of have to wait for sponsors actually. That's like the one of the reasons why I'm like inconsistent because if the economy is slow and we're in a recession and they're not trying to spend money on ads, then I actually don't have money to fund the videos. But
Mm.
right now we got like three more videos in the pipeline.
Uh-huh. Well, um I mean your videos do go semi-viral like a lot because like even
Sometimes.
I
Yeah.
mean, well, I mean a decent amount because like even
Yeah.
for me, like I mean maybe it's cuz I'm into self-improvement content, but like I'll be recommended your videos like a lot in my, like from what I've seen anyway. Like it'll be
Mhm.
like one video with like 1.5 million subscribers. Maybe that's just my personal thing, but I do think that like you do get a lot of coverage in general on YouTube. That's just my experience of it though.
Mhm.
I mean I've noticed a lot more like just like Hamza, you know?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I've noticed like he's on a lot too on YouTube
Yeah.
and such.
Yeah,
Mm.
he's smart. Because what he does that I don't is he uploads like almost every day. He like his animators, they kind of take assets that exist online already. For example, like I was watching some of his videos because I'm trying to study what he's doing because he's definitely performing better than I am, like no doubt about it. Because I've been away for 7 months, and when I came back, everyone's like Hamza, Hamza, Hamza. I'm like, who is this? So I looked
Right.
it up, I watched a bunch of his videos, and I'm like, oh, this is actually pretty entertaining. I could see why he blew up. He also does TikTok Shorts, which is something that I'm just not in that part of the game, but you seems like you kind of have to be now. So I am thinking about it. Haven't pulled the trigger yet. But what he does is he takes assets and then he'll like have his guys Photoshop it, and then he has the advantage of having his face shown, so he can use B-roll of himself. So I can't do that because I've picked to just not show my face as a path. So yeah, he's good. He's good. He teaches guys to work out and stuff like that, which is always a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I personally like I've only been watching Hamza for, I'm gonna say, because my friend, what he did was that he sent me. we were talking one day about, I think it was either working out or no fat, like something like that, just
Hmm.
some random topic. And he's like, "Oh, you should watch Hamza. You should watch." And I'm like, "Okay." And I'm one of those people that if you send me something, I'm either gonna watch it immediately or I'm can take a while to watch it. I should get in the
Yeah.
habit of just watching it. But and I watched him at first, and I found him to be kind of not weird. Weird isn't the right word, but a little too. I guess his like choices were a bit weird. Like the whole like Wojak like animations was a bit odd, and I started to like misinterpret what he was like trying to do. But then I watched a little bit more, and the more I watched, the more I understood. I'm like, okay, this is what he's doing. It's a bit more formulaic the more you watch it, but it's good,
Hmm.
which is why I like him now because
Hmm.
he's not, yeah, like he's not like some super, you know, crazy guy. Like, he's not like, oh yeah, you need to like buy my this or whatever. He's very straight to the point, very honest, and I would love to have him on. He's pretty
Hmm.
cool. I like him, but he's also a live by example kind of person.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah. Yeah.
if you look at him and the way he lives, and if you live like him, you'll get results. And
Hmm.
and thirdly, it's the straightforwardness of him because he doesn't have a 10-minute long intro only to give you a minute worth of tips. He just jumps straight
Hmm.
in, which is
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly, I think, is why he's famous, or like, as in why everybody likes him.
Hmm. He also has the fact that like he has a degree of charisma because he's showing his face, and he has like his own little inside jokes. Jeffrey Adonis, right? It's pretty funny. But that's why you'll see that his ratio of views is actually quite high compared to his subscribers. I think he has like 700,000, but he averages 100, 200K per video. That's like, it's way better than mine. Because the thing about me is people don't actually know much about me, right? You don't, I mean, you kind of watch my videos, you kind of have an idea, but you don't really like, you don't know what I look like. You don't know how I live my life really. But with him, it almost seems like he's your friend. He's your gym bro, right? Because watching him makes you motivated to hit the gym, which is a good thing. So that's one of the reasons I feel like why he's also doing extremely well. Yeah.
Well, I mean, he's also very interactive with his viewers too, because he like for example, I wouldn't call it a podcast, but it's like on his streams, what he'll do sometimes is that he will have his young like guest viewers, like he'll be like young as like 12 or 13 in some cases, and he'll talk to them about like how to live your life in a way that's not like lazy, or for lack, for in his words, being a Jeffrey, like
Hmm.
he would, and it's not in a toxic way either, which I feel like the lack of toxicity and the lack of like over the topness is what makes him so likable. And the fact that he's not, and the fact that when you look at him, you can say that's a, like a good looking, like successful, like man. If you, that's a major part of his success.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
I mean, he covered an interesting thing, and I don't remember which one of his videos it was, but it was talking about the anti self improvement movement, which I don't think that's the right word, but if it was a very popular video that went somewhat viral recently of a man based. It was, if you look up self improvement, you should say why self. It would be like why self improvement is ruining your life, and the moral of the video is that there's no point basically in being like into self improvement if you're not actually living your life.
Okay. I mean, yeah, some people make self-improvement like their religion, and I agree with that part. Like, if that's what you're saying, because I didn't watch that video, so I don't really know, but that's kind of what I'm guessing.
Yeah, because I mean, I watched it, and his whole thing is that, oh well, if you actually look at successful people, they don't just follow self improvement. Like you don't look at Bill Gates and be like, that's a guy who follows self improvement.
Yeah, yeah.
He just is successful. And in fact, a lot of like billionaires and millionaires, as people have found it, are very like I like,
Like out of shape,
and
or
not just out of shape, but also, I mean, that's part of it, but very just like just totally unhealthy in like every aspect. Like if you look at like Sigmund Freud, he was like a severe drug addict, for example. If
Hmm.
you look at like, well, I'm not like, for example, like Elon Musk, right? Like he, or not Elon Musk, I'm sorry, Donald Trump. He went to sleep in an interview for 3 hours a night, you know. So
Hmm.
and obviously and he's like 70 years old. Most people would be dead by then.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know what he's doing, but whatever it is, it's working. I think Joe Rogan talked about it, but like,
Yeah.
yeah,
I think my thing is like a lot of people in the self-improvement world have this idea of what like an ideal person should be. They should be extremely fit. They should never touch drugs or drink, right? Stuff like that. I don't really agree with that. I think the purpose of self-improvement is for you to get what you want. And what you want and what I want are like different things. If you want to live a party life and you just want to go out with a bang, sure. But as long as like it's your choice and it's not like you're not the slave of whatever substance you decide to indulge in. As long as you're the master of the substance, I think that's totally fine. Because there are people, hey, honestly, who's to say like what is the best way to live life without being that person or having their personality trait. For example, I was looking into extroverts versus introverts, and they found that extroverts, one of the easiest ways to actually tell if somebody is an extrovert is if they like to seek more thrilling activities like daredevils, and it's like a spectrum. So if you're somebody who's like an extreme extrovert, I mean, you might need to be doing some crazy stuff sometimes to feel like you're living a fulfilled life. But if you're like an introvert, maybe like you're a total opposite. You could just stay inside, read books, and that's like your fulfilled life. So yeah, that those are my thoughts on like the ideal life. That and self-improvement is just a way for you to get to what your ideal life is.
it's just a means to an end, basically. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I mean, what's it called? There's a celebrity that you probably heard of that I'm
Hmm.
kind of a fan of. Like, I think that
Who?
he's kind of funny, but his name is Steve-O, and the thing is
Oh
with
yeah, I know
him,
Steve-O.
yeah,
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 yeah.
he's funny and stuff, but the thing is that with him, it's interesting that you bring up like the thrill like lifestyle, and like with him, he quit drugs, he quit alcohol. God,
Yeah, yeah.
good for him. But the thing is that, and this he says it in almost every podcast he's ever been on, that the biggest thing that he is really just an attention whore, and those are his words, not mine.
Mhm,
And he said that it's like in every aspect of him. Like he's like, it's in my DNA, like. And what I find
mhm.
interesting about that is that his idea of like a fulfilling life is basically doing like the craziest imaginable like stunts and like just going higher and higher until, I mean, I don't know what his mission is, but he's done. And again, this isn't very like safe for work, I guess, but he's done like skydiving and stuff like that, like just crazy. Like obviously you can go and watch it, but with him, like with like a guy like him, what do you think? Like, I mean, do you think that there's like a surplus of people like as a result of him? Like for example, like Logan and Jake Paul that are like trying to like, I don't know. I guess people online just trying to get attention through stunts.
Mhm. Hmm. I as I thought about it over the years, I think your genetics, like your genetic disposition is it's like at least 50% of what you want. So if you're somebody who really wants people's attention, I mean, there's pretty good chance that it's like built into your DNA, like Steve said. Like there is a factor of like environmental, like how he was raised. Who knows? Like maybe his parents like didn't give him enough attention. That could be a reason. But from what I've read, the studies say it's like hugely genetics, huge part of it. And personally, I feel like if you were born that way, you were gonna do it anyways.
I mean, like I obviously can't say for myself because I have like a fear of heights, for example. But I mean, like when you say that it's in your DNA, like genetically
Hmm.
speaking, for like attention, like
Hmm.
does that like are you saying like thrills in general, or do you mean specifically attention?
Okay, so yeah, that's a good question because attention is very different from thrills. Like you could be somebody, you could be
Yeah.
a daredevil, and you could just like not record it, and nobody knows about it. Or you could be somebody that wants to record, and the high that you get from this activity is actually seeing the video go viral, right? As compared to actually doing it, right? So I don't know. I haven't really read much about that specific thing, but I suspect that it is a huge part of it is probably genetics and also the environmental, how you were raised.
Mm-hmm. Cause yeah, no, I mean, like with like attention, like with any thrill in general, because I feel like attention seeking and thrill seeking are kind of similar behavior in like the way that they act of like trying to reach a certain
Mhm.
high, obviously without a substance or usually without a substance anyway. So, I mean, there is like a lot of evidence to suggest that there's genetic predisposition to things like drug use and
Yes.
like
Yeah.
having like an addictive personality. With
Hmm.
in Steve-O's case, funny enough, his mother was like a severe alcoholic, and everybody on his
Oh,
mother's side was an alcoholic or drug
okay.
user, and died related to symptoms related to alcoholism. So in his case, I think it would be partly genetic, but also environmental. But
Hmm.
I don't know. He's an interesting case because
Yeah.
you know, I mean, it's a miracle that he's even alive. But
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah. I've seen his stuff. But to kind of piggyback on what you said before, like everyone chases a high. I do think that is true to some extent. Because even if you live like a very monk life, you're just working out. I mean, working out is your high. Or like looking in the mirror and like getting attention from other people. Like you look the way you do, that is also a possible high. I'm not sure which high some people are chasing, but there's definitely something that makes them feel good that like reinforces that behavior that makes them want to do it again, and it's different for everyone.
there was a good quote by Jordan Peterson, and he said that you can only pick, or that you have to have, or I don't know if it was you have to have or you should only pick two vices, right? Like
Oh,
two,
really? Okay.
or maybe not two vices. I'm probably misquoting him, but it was something along the lines of you need to have, or uh, you will have two vice. It was something along the lines of you will have two things that you're addicted to, like guilty pleasures, but you have to pick which ones. It was something along the lines of that. I could probably find it later, but
Yeah, I would love to see that quote. And I wonder if he thinks you have the choice to pick. Because, like, with the alcoholism thing, right? Like, some people, they taste alcohol, like, they're hooked, it's just there haunting them forever, basically. So I wonder if he thinks you can pick it.
yeah. I mean, there was a good quote, funnily enough, again by Steve-O, that if you, it was, the thing of alcoholism is that there's, I mean, obviously it's a touchy subject, but the thing with it is that if you have like a recovered alcoholic,
Hmm.
the thing is that it's the gorilla out of the cage. He used a metaphor that was, I mean, it was pretty brilliant. That being that if you like drink alcohol as a recovered or recovering alcoholic, the problem with it is that it basically lets out a version of yourself,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
very hard to get back in. It's very hard
Yeah.
to put back in. And I mean, the same could go for many addictions in general.
Hmm.
But that was, I heard that and I was like, that's a very, it's very true. I feel like, I don't know. It was, I mean, he would know the most about it, considering he went through it himself. But I mean, you did make a video with regards to quitting addiction, um, and it went somewhat viral of how to quit any addiction.
Hmm.
And could you refresh like anybody on the podcast of like what the number one way to quit an addiction would
Uh-huh.
be?
Well, I actually don't remember what I said in that video. I think that video was like 6 years old. But this is something I think about because like every year I try to do a no fab video for like No Net November. And okay, so one thing I read is there is no best strategy. They did this like study to figure out like what is the best strategy for people to like hit their goals or something like that. And they found that there is no best strategy, but the person who had the most strategies was most likely to hit their goal. So I think that is a possible thing that we can apply to addictions. There's multiple strategies I've talked about in the past. One of them is like the based off the mouse experiment, mouse utopia experiments. Basically, like if your life is shit, if you don't have friends, you're going to be addicted to substances because, like, you don't have like a healthy outlet to get pleasure from, such as socializing. So that's like one strategy. Like, work on yourself, go out and talk to people, make some friends, right? So that's one strategy. Another strategy is like the replacement strategy, which is I guess similar to the mouse thing, but basically like whenever you have an urge to do something, you like try to teach yourself to do something else instead. Okay, so that's like another strategy, which has worked for some people, but I've also gotten emails from others that are like, this strategy has been terrible for me. Like it's like hurt me mentally because I felt like I was just, failing. And then there's like a new strategy that I've been looking into, which is based off of the easy peasy method. Like this, I forgot who wrote it, but it was like a guy who wrote a book called Easy Peasy Method for Quitting Smoking. But there's a version of it online for quitting pornography. And I'm still reading it. I'm still like researching it. But from the gist of what I got, it's kind of like changing the way you think about the addiction or the whatever. Because when it comes to like pornography, there's almost like excuses that you give yourself in your mind. Like, oh, it's like, "Oh, I should just do it, prevent prostate cancer, whatever. Like, oh, like it doesn't hurt to take a look, something like that.
Like
So you like
negotiation.
exactly, exactly. So like that's another strategy. Like you mentally finalize the negotiation and make the decision that logically, whatever, that it is simply just not a good idea to do this thing. So that's like another strategy. So I don't know. And there's also like the alcoholic anonymous strategy, which is like you join a group and there's steps and you're doing it for all these other people. So it's almost like a ritual that also, it works for some people, but it doesn't work for others. Cause I think their success rate is like, actually, I don't know, but I know it's not like 100%. Uh,
Well,
yeah.
I think that alcoholics, for example, it's unfortunate, but uh, and I don't remember who wrote this study, but it was only about 5% of alcoholics in general end up being like permanently or at least
Oh,
for
really?
yeah, recovering from alcoholism. Right, only about
Is this for people that go to the AA meetings, or is this just in
like
general?
just in general, I think.
Okay.
Which is I mean, the numbers for like addiction in general aren't in your favor, unfortunately.
Hmm.
Cuz
Hmm.
I know people that have, I mean, if they're watching this, obviously I hope you quit, but the thing is that they have been like, for example, they would start smoking like I'm gonna say like when they were 20 and they're like 60 now or more,
Yeah.
and they do it for over 40 years, and they don't they either don't try to quit, or if they do it, they just immediately go back. With nicotine, it's there's obviously pretty severe withdrawals.
Yeah.
Like it's like a severe anxiety all the time. You know, and you're it just you just wouldn't feel good, obviously. But
Mhm.
so that's part of it too, withdrawals. But in terms of like addiction as a whole, it's something that I feel like people overestimate themselves in. But what I found, like to your point with regards to loneliness and like people and being around people and Alcoholics Anonymous, I think that it works because addiction in general thrives off of two things. Well, one of those things thrives is basically the same thing as the other, but it basically thrives off boredom, right? Because if you're really busy all the time, chances are you won't have the ability to, indulge in an addiction, right? You know, in your video on the NoFap timeline, I remember you mentioned you had to go outside a lot,
Yeah.
right? You had to keep yourself busy,
Hmm.
right? So I think that it's keeping yourself busy that would probably be a substantial like part of it anyway.
I think that's definitely a part of it. I wouldn't say it's just boredom. I would say it's boredom or stress is, like 90% of the instances what like triggers you to like want to lean back on your addiction. It's one of those.
Hmm. I mean, because like for example, in like rural Pennsylvania, right? There's nothing to do there. If you've ever been there to
Hmm.
Delaware, Pennsylvania, there's either nothing to do there or so little to do there, it's not even funny. And as a result of that, a lot of the kids end up turning to drugs and alcohol
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
there's nothing to do. Same thing happens in countries like, I don't know if it was the Netherlands, but I had um well, I don't know if he's going to be watching, but it was one of his friend. It was either, I think it was somebody that he knew, basically was in the Netherlands, and they tried a pot edible, and like when asked why, their answer was like, "Oh, well, in the Netherlands, like, there's really nothing to do since it's just cold all the time, and you're not." I don't know if it was the Netherlands. I think it was the Netherlands, but it was like, "Oh, there's nothing to do, so all you can really do there is either get high or maybe party, but that's about it because it's just
Hmm.
cold 100% of the time."
Hmm.
So again, boredom plays into the aspect of it.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. That's one of the reasons.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. I think that boredom's probably the biggest part of it. Personally, that's just what I've always found to be the biggest part of it: boredom, loneliness, and stress, I guess. Um,
Yeah, yeah. I think
yeah,
those three cover like 95% of like
mhm,
reasons why. Yeah.
right. This is going back to an earlier topic, but with regards to
Hmm.
Hamza, he had kind
Okay.
of a hot take, all right, and I wanted to see if you agreed with this. He says
Okay.
that you shouldn't play video games, and his reasoning makes
Mm.
sense, but I want to just like your opinion right off the bat.
It depends how much you play. Like I still play video games, and it's a way for me to connect with my friends from like middle school, high school, because they still play the same game. So now we have a reason to get together and like catch up. I play TFT, Team Fort. It's like some auto chess
Yeah.
game. It's a very casual game. You can kind of like turn your brain off. But like what I like is like we jump in a Discord chat and we're like catching up. We're talking about current events in our friend's life, and at the same time we're playing the game. So it's like a social activity. Um, I mean, some people might push back and say like, oh, you could just do that with people at the gym. But with my lifestyle, I'm constantly traveling. I don't have too many friends overseas because I'm only in spots for like a month. You're not going to make like deep, meaningful relationships in a month. You need more time. So for me to maintain the relationships with my older friends, I do need a reason, an excuse almost to like hang out with them online. And that happens to be gaming. It's actually a pretty good reason. Like Among Us, when Among Us was popular, I had such a fun time. I had so many great moments that I haven't had since like high school. Some really memorable moments where like this friend did this, moments that like you'll remember for years to come. Like back in the day when we were like in tribes, people formed strong relationships with each other because they went on adventures together. They like overcame obstacles together. That's not really possible in modern society unless you live in like a in the hood or something, where shit goes down all the time. But if you're living in like a safe part of the world, yeah, there's not much adventure. So this gives us another way to get adventure, and as long as you're doing it like a healthy amount, I don't see the problem. And there's an additional thing to think about. As AI advances, the percentage of people who will not have jobs will increase drastically. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, so what are they going to do? I mean, you need to entertain them somehow. And yeah, so gaming is going to be huge. And it's already like the gaming industry is bigger than all other forms of entertainment combined. And it's only, it's the newest form of entertainment, actually. And it's
Hmm.
only growing exponentially. So I agree with Hamza. If if you don't go to the gym, if you don't have any good habits, and all you do is play games all day, yeah, you need to stop. But if the rest of your life is on point, it doesn't hurt to play an hour or two a day.
Right. I
Yeah.
mean, Hamza. I mean, Hamza obviously can be kind of not well, extreme but necessary, right? He's not like extreme, like over the top extreme, but in terms of some of the things that he does, because I don't know if it was him, but my friend was telling me about
it might be him. It probably is Hamza, but it was somebody that doesn't indulge in TV, video games, or movies or anything like that. And when I heard about it at first, I kind of was like weirded out by it. But then I watched Hamza's video with regards to like video games specifically, and I can see where he's coming from now, and I am leaning towards like agreeing with him because his point was the problem with the video games, the stipulation that he had with it was the fact that number one, it's time that like you're wasting when you could be doing something more productive. That's kind of what everybody's stipulation with it is. But secondly, if you're playing video games, you're more likely to partake in like other activities that aren't like so beneficial, like fapping, like possibly drug use.
Mhm. Okay, I would push back on that actually. First point was that it's not productive time. This is something that I've been thinking about a lot because last year I hit it big, made a lot of money, but like actually lost it all. But that's besides the point. When I was at the peak of my net worth, I remember going into the shower and was like, "Huh, this is like, what am I going to do with this money? Like, what is the point of it?"
Right.
And at a certain point, you realize that life is, I mean, some people feel like there's a destination that you need to get to in life. I start to think that personally, my meaning of life is to just enjoy it, to have like a fun life. Of course, balancing, that doesn't just mean like do drugs all day because like then I'll die early, right? So it's like a balancing point. Like I'll have fun, but at the same time, I will maintain my productivity so that I can live, so I can sustain myself in a healthy amount. So I'm still working and stuff, but I'm still having fun. Like to take away TV and movies and basically all forms of entertainment. Well, I mean, I guess you could find entertainment in life, which is entertaining, but I don't know. Like I personally don't close myself away from anything. I don't like forbid myself from doing anything. If I'm in a position where somebody offers me something and I know it's not going to kill me, like chances are I'll take it because maybe I'm different. Like personality wise, I am an adventure seeker. So when
Hmm.
there's an opportunity for an adventure, I almost always say yes.
Right.
The second point you made was that somebody who plays video games has a higher chance of other bad habits. I don't know. Maybe that's true. I guess there are some studies out there that might, prove that. But then it's like, does correlation,
Well, I don't think
lead
he
to
was.
causation?
Yeah, I don't think he was referring to a study. I think that he was just saying that in general, people that are playing video games, for example, are in general like he's not citing any study that I
Hmm.
know of. He's just saying that if you are to like sit in your bed all day and play video games, or just sit in general and just play like video games,
Yeah.
you're really doing is just flooding your brain with dopamine, and as a result of just doing like that, like just pleasuring your, like like just entertaining yourself basically for about an hour, you're more likely to do something like fap.
I don't know if that's true, really. But like you could use the same argument. Like if you go to a coffee shop with your friend and you're sitting down and talking, you're sitting down and just flooding your brain with feel good chemicals as well. What's the difference?
I mean, I suppose, but at the same time, I feel like he was just more talking about the, like, because obviously everything in a way is a vice. Like,
Yeah.
talking to like friends, for example. I love talking to people. I love being around people. I love friends. I love
Hmm.
being able to interact with people. And I interact with people so much that like people have told me like, oh yeah, like everybody knows you, like, you know, and obviously that's a good feeling. However, I just like to interact with people, whoever it is, and it could be out of curiosity, it could be out of the thrill of talking to somebody, but I really, really enjoy talking to people and being around other people and things of that nature. And in a way, that is kind of my vice. For
Hmm.
you, it might be just seeking out adventure, but what's important is obviously number one, controlling it, but
Hmm.
which, I haven't done anything like stupid because of it, but Hamza's point with regards to video games as a vice or as a form of vice is that there's ways of basically, I mean, like working out, for example, might be I don't know, but let's just say it's working out. That's a healthy vice, right? for him,
Yes,
whereas video games for the majority of people that are playing it, from what he was saying, is not a healthy vice, right?
agreed. Yeah,
It
for most people, it's a problem. Yeah.
right, because for most people it's like 15-year-olds that are, or kids, or whatever, that are just kind of sitting around doing nothing, and they have nothing else to do when they could be playing sports, for example, with their friends, which
Hmm.
maybe that's not their way of having fun, but at the same time, which of the two is healthier?
Yeah, agreed. Agreed.
Right. um it's what's hmm. I mean, this kind of brings up the next question, which is, how do you cope with boredom? Like, what do you do?
I do. I'm a very spontaneous person, so like I'm always up to something, right? So last year I was kind of bored, which is why I actually stepped away from YouTube for a bit because I feel like self improvement is a solved equation. Like, I mean, if you think about it, you kind of just build good habits and you stick to it, and that's like 80% of it, you know? So I kind of got bored of thinking about it and I wanted to think about some other stuff. So I fell down the rabbit hole for like cryptocurrencies, UFOs, like conspiracy theories, all this like
Right.
crazy stuff. That's how I entertain myself. And at the same time, I'm constantly traveling to a new place. Like I was just at Chile, just like just because it was there. Like I was nearby. So I was like, all right, I'll go to this country that looks like a Chile called Chile. So yeah, I just kind of do random stuff to deal with boredom, but I don't find myself bored that often because I'm always doing something. Like I always find myself doing something. So I'm never like sitting in the room like, oh my god, what should I be doing? That never happens to me.
Hmm. I mean, for me personally, I've always, tried to stick to the like just basic good habits, like of what to do when you're
Hmm.
bored, like working out, hang out with friends, cuz obviously a lot of that also has to do with like things like no fap and such, like, you don't want to like just sink into your bed all day, and I hate doing that now.
Right.
I hate doing that because I used to be a total couch potato, and then over time, the more I did, like in a day, the more I realized, oh wow, I really like to do things. Like I really like to, like, hang out with my friends, like just live life, because obviously video games are fun and all, but after a while, it's just kind of more of the same, right? Like now, for example, I don't really play video games. Like I do, but it's more of a from time to time thing. Just I would say a month ago, um, my friend and I tried playing Warzone again for the first time in about a year, and neither of us had any fun. And we're like, this is like a totally different game. Like it just doesn't feel the same. It's not even like the fact that they updated. It's just the fact that it wasn't as fun. Just it wasn't the
Hmm.
same. But
Hmm.
meanwhile, a year ago, or 2 years ago at this point, probably, what was interesting about it was that we would get so mad at the game, and I'm embarrassed to admit this, but I would get so ball bustingly mad at the game that like like I would actually like hang up the phone or like turn off the console in some cases, you know. And I didn't realize how bad this was until like looking back. So
Hmm.
I mean, I just personally don't play video games anymore. That's part of the
The,
reason.
okay, this made me think about something. It's like kind of related, kind of not related, but I've been thinking a lot about like what makes people happy because of that. The 33% of people in America are depressed. So many of my friends have admitted. I mean, they like told me they're depressed and they're taking medicine, and this never happened before in my life. I've never had 5 people tell me they're depressed in a month. So I've been thinking about it a lot, and like the happiest people in the world are kids, right? Kids are always playing games like tag, hide and seek, whatever. It's just like it's a game. It's always like a different game. So I suspect that gaming and play in general has a huge tie with happiness because my current theory is it forces you into another world where the rules are different and your likelihood of entering flow state in this new world is higher as compared to this current world. Like the current world of working, going to the office, whatever, not that fun of a game, kind of boring, but it is actually a game. Your
Mm.
current life is also a game. We are in a game of life. Maybe we're in a simulation, maybe we're not. I personally think maybe we are, and this is a game. So even if you're not playing video games, you are still playing a game. It's just a game that everyone is bored of.
Right. I mean, hmm. Like in terms of kids though and being happy,
Mhm.
I remember it was Shia LaBeouf and somebody else, and I kind of put the two and two together, and I realized something. Happiness is, I don't remember who said this, but it's a theory that happiness isn't really about necessarily adding something, but more so removing sorrow, like removing sadness and
Mhm.
anger and all this.
Yeah.
And I disagree with it, but then Shia LaBeouf said something with on John Bernthal's podcast, the guy who plays the Punisher, and he said that a man like in Western America, there's no like ceremony of like when a man becomes a man. There's no like I mean there is, but that's more of like religious things. And he said that a man becomes a man when he becomes responsible for others. And
Yeah.
I've realized that a major reason why kids are so happy all the time, they're always like, haha, life is great. Yeah, like they don't care, is because they don't care. They just don't have any need necessarily to care about anything, to be, unhappy. They don't have to pay bills, they don't have to work. There's nothing tying them down and they can do whatever they like.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that. The lack of responsibility causes kids to think about, I guess, like unhappy subjects less often. They have less of these unhappy thoughts, less stresses, which I agree. Like happiness occurs when you remove sorrow. That's kind of like the Buddhist belief as well. And but that's something that I feel like it's like a spectrum. Like kids, they like a kid in modern Western society doesn't really have much worries, but at the same time, we have the adults with too many worries. I think we need to go back to the middle point, right? Where
Hmm.
people want to be a kid again, but they've forgotten how to enjoy, playing silly board games or whatever games, online games. Like you should be able to have fun doing those things with other people. I think that's a source of happiness when you're able to play with another person. You could go on a date and play with somebody, right? You could whatever play a video game. There different forms of play, but I feel like a lot of adults have forgotten how to play because they're so stressed out about their responsibilities. And how I kind of cope with this is I believe that there are a lot of things that I'm responsible for, like my family, etc. But at the same time, I know that whatever happens, happens, and there are some things that I just can't. I just like I can't control. Like if I die in a plane crash tomorrow, I could stress about it, but if it happens, it happens. Like there's nothing I could have done that would have prevented it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I mean,
yeah.
it's interesting that you bring up Buddhism because if you look at the whole, I remember my uncle told me this, and the more like I look at it, the more and more I realize that it's true. Like years later, and he said that the idea of Buddhism is, and like Hinduism is, and these are like, well, Hinduism is the world's oldest known religion, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and Buddhism is well over three, no, not well, yeah, about 3,000 years, 2,000 years old. The point of it is essentially freedom from attachment.
Hmm.
That's the whole point of it. And if you look at kids, they're happy all the time because they're not really attached to anything. They don't really have any they don't have anything removing them from what they like and like, adding them to like putting them into what they dislike, which is also goes into like the problem with school. Because if you look at school inherently, it's turning something that's very, 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 very fun into a chore, right? Because if you
Hmm.
if you look at kids, all they want to do is learn. When I was a kid, I asked, whatever question that came to mind, I would be like, "Oh, what is, like what is this made of? Like whatever." Like, and I love to learn. I still love to learn, but over time, school obviously makes it more and more of a chore to learn. And you look at that, and that should technically be an impossibility. Kids, all they want to do is learn, and yet you're making it so that it's boring to do so.
Right, because you're forcing them to learn about something that they don't want to learn. You're going against the flow of things. There's this concept that I've been promoting a lot on the channel. It's from Taoism. It's called Wu Wei. The Taoism is like very similar to Stoicism. I call it the lazy version of Stoicism because it's just like go with the flow. So if you want to learn about cars, okay, then you'll have a great, fun, amazing, easy time studying cars. But then if somebody tells you like, oh, you gotta learn about birds, well, you don't want to learn about birds. So now it becomes torture.
Right.
You're going against the flow. So
I
that's what
mean,
school does.
because I mean, it's funny that you like bring up like the car thing because I have a friend, for example, who's interested, like as can be, in cars. Like he doesn't know all the ins and outs of it, but he's very interested in cars, and he what's it called? He loves doing it. Like he'll spend hours in a day on cars, right? Hours, just spending time on cars. And he like will get it wrapped, he spent thousands of dollars on it. He worked really, really hard to obviously make this car. And it's obviously sometimes he gets very frustrated with it, but the lengths that he'll go to, like just for the car, is kind of interesting. And it also makes me think about like how much joy, like, he's obviously getting out of it. And it's a really simple way of thinking, right? It's very simple. Just I fix a car and I make, I wrap it. And he's able to get enjoyment out of that, right? And it's something so simple. Kids are much in the same way. They're able to get enjoyment out of anything, but also very easily bored, right? And
Mhm.
like to your point about flow, some of these kids, like there's kids, right, that will be obviously, maybe ADHD has a part in this, but like kids that can't sit still, right? Like kids generally don't like to sit still. That's why in
Yeah.
kindergartens they're always running around doing whatever. When you're forcing a kid to sit down for 8 hours a day, it you can imagine how unhealthy that is.
Yeah. Because you're
Especially,
trying
yeah,
to
yeah,
I was just gonna say you're trying to give him a personality that he doesn't have. You're trying to force upon a personality within them.
right, yeah. Jordan Peterson, um, he said that basically they're trying to turn. Well, I don't know. I don't think it's his exact words, but it was something along the lines of, you know, girls obviously are able to like, focus a little bit more and mature a little bit faster. However, with boys, they're supposed to like be out and about and they're supposed to be like working and, like have a ton of energy and be able to do whatever. And girls in general are just able, like he's like, I've studied it, whatever. Girls are able to just sit better as kids and like do whatever, like just focus on a task, whereas boys just want to explore and learn. And so when you try and it's like asking like a dog to climb a tree. It's just not going to happen most of the time.
Yeah, it's against their nature.
Hmm. So I'm probably going to have to end this in about 5 minutes, but
Oh, okay.
so yeah,
Oh,
because um, I just got to do something soon. But I mean, I'm gonna ask like your final thoughts on a few things. Do you watch any other self improvement channels?
I don't. I actually, the only thing I watch on YouTube is like macroeconomics, world news. That's it.
Mm-hmm. So
What?
once
Well, actually,
again, yeah.
there is one guy that I watch. What I've learned is the name of his channel because it's just so good. So whenever he drops something, I do watch it. What I've learned.
Uh, that's the. Oh wait, I've seen his videos before. He's done a few different things.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's really smart. Um,
yeah.
I like a lot of his things. So I also was interested about sleep. So
Mhm.
recently I've been looking into like ways of getting deeper sleep and such, and I didn't realize how poorly of sleep I was getting until I started looking into it myself. This was with regards to Hamza. But Hamza, I was watching a video by him and he was talking about the importance of sleep and how most people aren't getting it, or at least a good
Mhm.
amount. and I have a sleep tracker, or I have my Apple Watch, I should say, and I have this app called Sleep Cycle. Hamza recommended it, and I didn't realize how crappy my sleep was until I actually looked at it. Because, like, what do you think about, like, well, actually, I'm going to ask your thoughts on this before I say anything, but how do you think a person, like, should get better sleep? Like, how do you get, like, deeper sleep?
Yeah, Hamza actually spoke about this, but at the same time, I also heard Andrew Huberman speak about this. So I'm not sure who said it first, but basically, well, 25% of people have sleep apnea, which is they stop breathing or something occurs while they sleep. The breathing patterns gets disrupted somehow. 25%, and there's two main causes for this. One of them is like you're overweight, so when you're laying down, the fat compresses on your air pathways, so like you gotta lose weight. And the second one is you breathe through your mouth. You're not supposed to breathe through your mouth. What I've learned has a video on this. It's like there's a bunch of like scientific benefits for breathing through your nose. One of which is like increased oxygen intake. So they found that people who breathe through their mouth have a significantly higher percentage of sleep apnea. And if you have sleep apnea, you're not going to fall into deep sleep enough, or even if you do fall into deep sleep, you'll wake up from it because you suddenly stopped breathing. And this ties into testosterone, actually, which is something I've been researching a lot, because the average testosterone in men have dropped from 1,000 to 350 in like 100 years, which
Wow.
is, I mean, that's crazy. And turns out testosterone is produced while you sleep. So if your sleep is fucked up, well, that's probably going to get fucked up too. And if your testosterone's low, then a whole bunch of other shit happens, like lack of energy, depression, loss of muscle mass, loss of aggressiveness, like less risk taking, a bunch of shit, right? That could be the reason why so many men are, feeling like losers nowadays. Everything's connected, everything's tied together. So yeah, it's extremely important. And the piece of advice that Hamza recommended in his video is like you tape
Yeah.
like you put a piece of tape, and that's the same thing Andrew Huberman recommends. Actually, I've been doing it as well because my girlfriend tells me that I sometimes snore when I sleep, and that is
Mm-hmm.
a sign. If you snore, that's like a huge indicator that you might have sleep apnea. So I've been doing it to try to fix that and optimize that as well.
Mm-hmm. I've actually tried the tape over my mouth sleeping thing.
It works. I
Yeah,
think it
it
works.
does. Yeah, I mean, for me, what I've noticed is that it makes my mouth less dry, which in general like allows me to wake up less because I feel like part of the reason why I was waking up in the mornings, like 4 a.m. or whatever, I would be able to go back to sleep, but part of it was also because I was like I just had such a heavy like amount of like dehydration,
Yeah.
which is obviously also why you recommend like to drink water in the morning. But another thing that I find interesting is that I mean I can't say from experience, but from what a lot of people say, like smoking weed is another part of having bad sleep because
Yeah.
THC, I don't know what it does, but apparently it makes it so that your sleep in general is less deep, less,
Yeah.
yeah,
You don't dream when you smoke weed. You don't dream.
right. And
Yeah.
the thing is that people that go off weed, obviously, there's a whole host of other withdrawal symptoms, but one of the big ones is that you dream like so vividly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Joe Rogan talked about this. He said that he's like, that can't be good for you, that you don't dream. Like, we're supposed to dream for a reason, whatever that reason may be.
hmm
But he's like, I just started getting these really vivid dreams, and he's like, that can't be healthy. That I'm not dreaming every night, like that I don't dream as much, which is also interesting because I've noticed that like whenever I ask like adults, like old, like they're always like because I remember as a kid like dreaming so much. I still do dream a lot, but when you ask like an adult, like, oh, have you ever like had like a dream? They dream very rarely. The older you get, the less you dream, which I have a theory that that could be like a sign of like not necessarily poor health, but I mean, I guess poor health, but there's something about dreaming in general that could be a signifier of, in my like theory, memory development, which is another reason why like smoking weed, for example, would give you bad memory.
Yeah, that is a side effect. Yeah.
Hmm. So, I mean, yeah, we're gonna have to end things soon, but
Okay.
you know,
Yeah, I had a. I was just gonna say, like, I had a really good time doing this with you. If you want to do like a part two, I'm totally down for it because
All
this
right,
is like
yeah.
one of the more fun podcasts that I've done.
Really? Thank you.
Yeah, because other people they kind of just ask questions, but you like, we're having like a discussion. It's a fun discussion.
thank you, thank you.